A wide-ranging one-on-one with Ron Paul on this edition of Politics. Welcome to Politicking. I'm Larry King. He's a three-time presidential candidate, a former longtime congressman from Texas, an outspoken advocate for limited government and low taxes, a physician who's warned that when you go to bed with government, you must expect the disease it spreads. We'll find out what he means by that. He's the always outspoken Ron Paul, host of the Ron Paul Liberty Report. He joins us from Lake Jackson, Texas. A lot of things to cover today, but first, your son, Senator Paul, he's returned to Capitol Hill after suffering multiple injuries during an attack in his yard. What was that all about, and how is he doing?
He's doing fine. He's still aching, and I don't know whether he should be back in Washington, but he's managing okay. But, you know, I don't know much more than what I read in the papers. I've talked with him, but I think he's a little bit befuddled as well, because he's not quite sure of the motivations. And right now he's concentrating on getting better rather than trying to figure out what might have been in this person's mind. It does seem awfully strange to everybody who's thought about it.
He has no idea why he was attacked?
He really doesn't, and I sometimes, and I shouldn't even get involved in this, but sometimes you wonder about the guy's mental status to do this. You know, it's just not an ordinary thing. He's lived next to Rand for a long time, like 18 years, and I don't think he's talked to him, though, in about the last 10. So it's strange, and this is not a normal thing, you know, for your neighbor to come over to your yard and cause violence. It's pretty weird.
He announced his return to the Senate on Twitter, saying he's ready to help move forward with tax cuts. What's your assessment? First, did you think he came back too soon? You're a doctor.
Well, you know, parents tend to be more protective, than others. I know that was my first thought, but I'm not, next to him. I don't see what he's doing, but I know he was really in trouble because in phone conversation, I was the one that encouraged him to go back and get another x-ray, and that's when they found the fluid on the lungs. So yeah, we worry about it, and I think another week's rest couldn't have hurt him, but I've always been one that didn't baby our kids. You know, I was usually always encourage them, don't let her on too long. But this is a more serious thing, but I think it's better we keep moving even when we're not feeling good. Matter of fact, Rand told me that it was hard to get up because if anybody's had this to them, a fractured rib, it's hard to roll around or cough or sneeze. Yeah. But he said when he could get up, one of the best things he could do was walk. So this is what I've always told the kids, get up and walk and move around and you'll feel better. And most of the time, that's pretty good advice.
Okay, where's the House going to go with its tax plan this week? And if you were in that august assembly, how would you vote?
Well, you know, it's hard to say until you see the final version. The way I looked at these, and this is the way I would if I were in Congress, if there's a net reduction in taxes, I'd have a hard time not voting for it. But if there's a net increase, I don't think I could vote for it. And they're going to claim things. But my big problem with it is that they don't know what they're talking about. You know, they're talking about years out, and they don't even know what this year's budget will be like. You know, the revenues may go down. There may be another flood in Texas, and there may be another war in Europe, and there'll be supplementals already. This new president's had several supplementals, and people are all for them because they were, natural disasters. So that's why I don't think much will be accomplished.
Well,
if I were convinced there was a little less spending and a little less taxes, net-wise, I would vote for it. But I'm not too certain of exactly what's in that bill.
Are you saying, Ron, that based on things that happen that you don't expect, you can't have a tax plan? Are you saying that? I mean, because anything can happen.
Yeah, but the big thing is, from a libertarian viewpoint, is we shouldn't be involved in solving every single problem that happens to anybody. You know, if you have a business and you go bankrupt, why is it that people assume, well, that was uncalled for. We have to bail them out, though. But if you're big enough, we bail them out. And just think of what we did in '08 and '09, trillions of dollars. No, it was unexpected. The Congress were pikers. They only appropriated, a trillion or so, where the Fed created like 14 or 15 billion dollars. So a libertarian just can't do the nickel and diming. It's just that, why are we involved in this? Why? Because it's a moral hazard to say there's insurance and promises if you get into trouble, we're going to take care of you. Well, government doesn't take care of anybody. All they do is they go up and round up some wealth and money and taxes and take it from somebody else. But that leads to bankruptcy, and that's where we are today. We have followed that philosophy for too long.
What do you think of the Senate plan? It's significantly different from the House's. With their bill will include Obamacare going out, and what's your reaction to that part of the House of
they were
Congress?
the first. Yeah, the Senate was the first one to mention that. Well, they've talked about it before, and the House is now talking about it. Oh, no, I think that would be good, because it just doesn't add up. The people who pay, these funds into Medicare to make it work are the people who couldn't afford insurance, so they're paying this penalty, which is a tax. So if you remove that option, you're actually cutting taxes on poor people. But this whole system of Obamacare pushed the prices up, pushed people out, then they'd pay the penalty, and that was another tax. And then if we go to cut it out, they say, well, you're going to make it worse. We need their money. Why do we need the money coming from poor people who had no money to buy insurance? At the same time, just look at the increases in the cost of insurance. It really isn't working. We have to admit this.
But
Government's
Ron,
they're not good. They're not good managers. I'll tell you that.
Ron, we do have millions more insured that weren't insured before. And how can that be bad?
Well, it's not bad, but some people question that. And the other thing is why are so many poor people not buying into it? Because they can't afford it. And it's just that government management has never proven to be all that good. I think that there's other ways to do it. I keep thinking about delivering health care compared to delivering a cell phone. Just think of, what if the government said that, well, we're going to have cell phones for everybody because it's very important for health and protection and jobs, and everybody has to have a cell phone, and they decided 20 years ago. So they give the contract to one cell phone company. The cost would have gone up, they wouldn't have worked, and it would be a disaster. Instead, when it was put into the marketplace, the quality went up, way up. The phones got smarter and smarter, and the prices came down. And but people don't have faith and confidence that a service can be distributed like you can distribute other goods and services in a free market. Larry, I've said it many times, but I practiced medicine when there was no Medicare or Medicaid. And I've worked in Catholic hospitals. People were never turned away. I was raised in, at a time where insurance wasn't even, much of a deal. There was no third-party payments, but prices were down. Used to be doctors and hospitals always gave you the lowest price. But when the third party pays, whether it's insurance or government or anybody else, the highest price is paid. Then who sets the rules? The insurance companies, the drug companies, they make these profits, and the patient suffers.
Are you saying Medicare's been a bad thing?
Well, I think I'm saying that before Medicare, nobody was out in the streets without medication, and technically there's no authority for the government to be distributing medical care. Where did this come from? It's not in Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, where it tells you exactly what we're allowed to do. And you say, well, maybe we should make an exception. Okay, if you want to make an exception, say government should distribute health care, you ought to change the Constitution, because now there is no responsibility at all to the Constitution. That's why we go to wars without declarations. I think that would be a good idea to say, well, yeah, if you think we have to go to war to protect our interests, which is nothing more than corporate interests in the military-industrial complex, then you ought to declare the war. No, you don't do that. The other day, the House tried to get a bill passed that said that why don't we have a debate on whether should we have have the authority to go to war in Yemen. and they wouldn't even have it. They doctored the bill up and watered it down and made things worse. But we shouldn't be fighting and being close allies with Saudi Arabia. And the tragedy, all you have to think about is the tragedy that's going on in Yemen, mainly because we don't obey the Constitution. So I emphasize the Constitution. But if you want to come up and say, okay, Ron, you're old-fashioned, we don't like what we do, we should amend the Constitution, and government should be responsible for medical care and all education, which they are, essentially. And it's a disaster. I mean, it's expensive. And look at the educational system. Kids now, well, they have to have free education. And now there's this $1.4 trillion of debt that's never going to be paid, and the quality of education goes down. I don't know how you can make a case for saying that we need more government management in these affairs, because it has created the bankruptcy, which is going to destroy, you know, the middle class. Matter of fact, the middle class is suffering tremendously now, and that tax bill is not going to help the middle class, because the system is rigged. It's rigged against the middle class and the poor. It's rigged for the super wealthy, and we should not be careless in order to grant more power to the government to protect these powerful special interests.
Let's touch some other areas. The president's just back from a 5-nation visit to Asia. How did he do?
Well, you know, I did one of my reports on that the other day, and actually, I said he didn't do too badly. You know, he was not his usual campaign-style rhetoric. On occasion, you heard that, and I thought it was half decent. But you know, I thought it was. You know, chipped away at. There was a lot. There was nothing. The opposition couldn't say anything decent about it, and they would find little bits of things and said he didn't say this. He didn't lecture the Chinese on human rights. Well, why don't we lecture our people and our Congress and our government on human rights before we go over? But the media was critical of Trump because he didn't go and try to pick a fight with the Chinese, telling them how to run their country. I don't happen to believe that's a wise thing to do anyway.
Why does he seem attracted, though, like in the Philippines and Russia, attracted to strong men government, strong man in charge?
I don't know. It must be his personality or something. So since I don't understand him, not many people do, and I wasn't a supporter for him, didn't vote for him, but I always hope for the best and always look for the positive, because I think that he honestly believed, and he even restated it on this trip, that we should have better relations with Russia. Why do we have to do this? Even though now, since he's been there, policies have shifted away from that position of talking and at least being diplomatic with the Russians. He was, you know, has drifted over to the neocon position, supporting and badgering, put on sanctions, and all these things are just trying to precipitate, you know, a Cold War, which they are doing. So I think him backing off from that was bad, and I don't know where he stands, because the other day, you know, like I said, he was really saying that what's wrong with getting along with Russia? And I don't know anything wrong with it. I think that's a good idea.
We'll have more with former Congressman Ron Paul, who speaks his mind right after this.